Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas. Um, One episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 26th of July, 2018, we are starting the second ever Tom Baker story, and the first story under new producer Philip HInchcliffe. I note that because, well, you'll see why. Basically, this story, the Ark in Space, starting, of course, on the 26th of July 2018 with part 1. And the Ark in Space part 1 is a quintessentially good episode. It's really strong after, even especially after Robot, where you just sort of had some meandering and just this real weak sense that it's like, we really aren't doing much here for it to be good. No, you have a strong start to everything. Honestly, first episode, from like the opening shot, you know that something's different. Like we're going for a bit more horror as we see this. We have the space station just floating above the Earth. Establish this setting, and it does an amazing job. This story and the next story we'll be looking at is directed by a man called Rodney Bennett. And Rodney Bennett, he's a new director to Doctor Who, and he does an amazing job at just getting this first episode to feel really like it's a big one of those big events. It's got we have this. We have the first shot where we see people covered in plastic, and there's this weird green filter on the lens, and the green filter. By today's standards, I guess you could say it looks cheap, but it's enough to be like, okay, this is weird. Like we already have the weird, unsettling, because it opens up one of the containers and just attacks the guy inside. No context, bam, that's cut away to a dark corridor where the TARDIS materializes. And the direction is just amazingly creepy. It's dark, so you don't see what's going on, but you just get the feeling that, ooh, something weird's happening here. This is not normal. And the Doctor, Harry and Sarah Jane, they arrive, and they arrive by accident. This is an accident. Harry screwed up. He twisted the helmet regulator, gave it a twist that sent them careening into the far future. And careening the TARDIS into the far future is not a very good idea. And well, they find they're on again. We're on this Ark, this space station, but it's a space station. They established that pretty quickly, about for the 30th century. Except that they're actually in the 51st. They're actually much later. Because 10,000 years apparently were spent in suspended animation. You have it's basically there were a bunch of solar flares on Earth, and they weren't. No one was woken up. So a lot of the story is basically here we're just searching around. There's some suspense with when the power goes on, with trying to get because the cords to the oxygen were cut clean through. That's not good. So there's no oxygen. Sarah Jane gets locked into suspended animation by accident because she was passing out from oxygen deprivation. And there's also a dead creature in a cupboard, and that's our cliffhanger. It's an amazing cliffhanger. It's like, okay, what is this? Why there's this giant dead insect that falls out? So it's weird. So with all that, just the creepiness, and there's a lot of humor with this gun shooting the scarf. So it's all amazing. So I'm going to give The Ark in Space Part 1 a 10 out of 10. All right, it is the 27th of July, 2018, and I just finished watching part 2 of The Ark in Space. And part 2 picks up where part 1 left off. And it, well, it very much confirms the creature is dead. It's not alive. But we slowly get some more sinister inklings that things are more sinister than previously thought. Mainly that the the guy from the beginning, well, his body's missing. Like he was eaten and absorbed by. He had eggs impregnated in him, and they hatched, and we see. And you do see that, there's this giant, that there is this giant still, there's this giant grub-like thing going around the place. It's giant, and it's not, that's something that you don't have, the, that you have the entire, this big thing going around, and you have, the characters, well, acting like it's a big deal. They are worried that, of course, obviously, the big conclusion is the doctor must have done something. It must have been him. It couldn't, because they are the ones that are new elements. You also have a lot of tension with Sarah Jane, because at the end of the last episode, of course, they found Sarah Jane cryogenically frozen. But what's interesting is that the doctor, turns out he got his facts wrong, and he realizes that, hey, it's actually, being cryogenically frozen isn't, the resuscitation process is partially programmed into the pods. So you have that interesting sort of, we have this completely new technology, but also you get the confirmation that they've overslept a lot. Like, we are millennia past where they were originally, where the human being race was originally supposed to be. Not just, an accident. Like, this was a deliberate problem. Like, there's literally there are just issues here, with everything. And, of course, you have the doctors expected. And you have you really good scenes with Sarah Jane getting essentially bailed out of her little cell chamber thing. Because he's, it's one of those things where you have, you have everything, made up for the story, and you have the story built around everything, being going awry. Like, you have a lot of issues with this episode. Like, they're like just on the station. It's not going too well. You have the leader woken up, and the big cliffhanger is that he's infected by this by this creature that's essentially going to be killing everyone. Like, this is not a good this is not a good ending. It's a very much a, hey, something's going totally and completely wrong here, and the doctor's going to have to be the one to stop it, because it's like, well, there's this creature, and this creature is, getting out of hand, and it's really well done overall. Like, the episode, the direction's nice, the acting's great, and you have everything built up around whether or not the creature will be making it out alive. Like, it's you have a lot of world building in this episode. You have this sense that this space station was in fact an ark. It's they even named their leader. They renamed their leader Noah after the myth of Noah's Ark, and it's all just there to be like, hey, we have this giant. We are having this giant thing just so we can try to save everything, because Earth was devastated by solar flares in the past. So they're just trying to make it so they have the doctor and come in and save everyone. And of course he's not trusted. So really it's just a lot of wandering around hoping everything can be fixed in time to save everyone. And it's a really interesting idea, like having everyone there basically to try to be fixed, even if it doesn't exactly, not everyone is safe immediately. Like, they are definitely, not necessarily all in the safest position. And the big cliffhanger is that, hey, the characters have, they have their, they are essentially stuck, with this creature that's basically, they can't get down to Earth right away. They're stuck, and it's a good ending. It's a good episode overall. It gives us, some actual stakes, some actual fear, that, things aren't gonna be perfect. But it's like, hey, so, I'm gonna give the Ark in Space Part 2 a 9 out of 10, because really the big problem in this episode is some of the effects are a little off. Alright, it is the 31st of July 2018, and I would like to make a quick apology as to why this episode is so damn late. Mainly because life got in the way and I got really, really busy, but I'm back now and hopefully we can catch up to where we were. But today on the 31st of July 2018, Ark in Space Part 3, let's go. And I'm going to try not to rush this because I have quite a lot of good things to say about Ark in Space Part 3. Mainly that outside of the bubble-wrapped hand, the effects improve quite a bit. Yeah, you can still tell it's a little bubble-wrappy in places, but let's be forgiving because bubble wrap wasn't exactly the most common thing in 1975. It most definitely wasn't very common in 75, mainly because it was just sort of it was just sort of starting out as a product. It wasn't a fully realized product yet. And you have quite a lot of this episode devoted to trying to figure out when the Weirin got in, how long they're waiting, and, well, not quite what they want, because the end is actually we get to see Noah transformed into a full Weirin, which is, it's a gorgeously shot cliffhanger. And oddly enough, according to the production notes, it wasn't intended to be the original cliffhanger for Part 3, which is interesting, because that cliffhanger works just so well. It's the big, because we started off with the dead monster, then we got the hand, then we have the full monster, and you really feel bad for Noah as in this story, as in this episode in particular, as he's slowly taken over. Like, he tells Vyra that she's got to be in control. Oh, and the Weirin pupa is still alive. Like, they only kill it in this episode. Like, there's more than one Weirin in this, on the Ark. Like, and there's a pretty decent sized chance that the Ark may be completely infested and that there's no way to actually, save everybody. Like, this may be what happens. Humanity might die. There's a good sense of dread. Now, people may recognize a lot of this story because it's actually, this is really where, it's the back half of this story, really, where the parallels to the science fiction film Alien come in, especially with, the sets being secluded, being cut off because they're on a space station, and they're coming out of cryosleep and that sort of thing. And we have some people actually dying because of this creature, because of the Warren. But, what you really have to also be really good is you have Harry Sullivan and Sarah Jane Smith. They both make really good impressions in this episode. Harry was presented as sort of an old-fashioned character, sort of offset Sarah Jane's more modern woman character, which is, they have a really good dynamic. Sarah Jane's like, Harry's like, oh, female president? And Sarah Jane's like, yeah, no, shut up, Harry, you're being dumb. We're so far into the future. It's quite funny. And you have this feeling that, because everything is automated on the Ark, you have the fact that the Weirin are going to actually win because they do things. You also have the Doctor really just, Tom Baker, this is his second story, and he's already selling the danger. A lot of this episode is just Tom Baker selling the danger, as we have reshots of how the Warren got onto the Ark. That's where a lot of this episode is devoted to, getting us established how they got in, how they ate Dune before going to Noah, which is interesting. They were originally just going to do Dune. They examined that, the Weirin that's dead is actually the Weirin, it's actually a queen. It's meant to have eggs and breed, which is, again, a terrifying idea, of course. Just the alien gestating inside you and the eggs hatching that way, and you just becoming a giant insect. Seriously, they could do, the Weirin could come back in New Who, and we could get some really terrifying imagery as people turn into bugs. That'd probably be really cool. But also, this isn't the only time we're going to see the Weirin, as they do come back in audios later on. But it's just, and the Doctor, basically, you have the Doctor selling this, also be really good at selling the fake science, the whole, the gypsies used to think that the retina of the human eye retained the last thing that it saw. Completely BS science, something that never actually works, not a real thing. That doesn't happen. The human eye doesn't retain the last thing it saw after death. But with this alien, okay, we can do it. We'll buy it. And you have the Doctor plugging himself in. He might be taken over. That's a fear. And then you have the Doctor going to the solar sex, because that's where he thinks everything is. And that's where he's confronted by Noah, who then turns completely into the adult Weirin. And that's our cliffhanger. It's an amazing, well done cliffhanger. We have the build up to the fear itself, and then just the cliffhanger. Everything just comes together in this episode to be so a really solid episode. I can't really point out any flaws. Even the direction is good, and the music, there isn't much of it, which actually helps. It's very background, so you don't really have a lot of music. So I'm going to give the Ark in Space Part 3 a 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 1st of August 2018, and I just finished watching Part 4 of the Ark in Space. And Part 4 is when we really learn about the Weirin's plan and their backstory. Robert Holmes provides a rather interesting and complex backstory for his alien creatures this time around. Mainly that they're from the Andromeda Galaxy, and being from the Andromeda Galaxy, when initially humans explored the galaxy, they ended up killing them by accident. The Weirin usually feast actually on just livestock, basically feeding on cows. They don't eat people, but they've decided to. And, we have a full threat, because we have the adult Weirin here, and more Weirin on the way. Weirin a swarm around the Ark, and that's a big problem. They take out the transmat that, the Doctor and co uses to get around a little bit, and you have a real sense that everything could be falling apart. it's only that, like, they figure out that, hey, if we wind this up here, we can get them off the Ark, and we can, save the day. That being said, the only way to do that would be to have someone squeeze through a bunch of ventilation shafts. So you have this extended sequence of Sarah Jane going through ventilation shafts, and there's this amazing moment near the end where the Doctor calls her stupid and basically starts insulting her. But what's amazing is that he's using reverse psychology. Like, he doesn't mean it. So it's sort of this bait and switch of, you think, oh, he's being horrible to her. Like, that's really completely out of character. Is this Doctor going to be mean and horrid? No, he's actually quite nice. So they defeat the Wirren. Noah ends up actually remembering a little bit of his humanity in saving the day. But he's still not human. He's still back as, well, a giant one of the Wirren. He's not. It's not a matter of, hey, I'm human again. No, he still has, just. He ends up, sacrificing himself. Same with one of the other crew members who isn't infected by the Wirren, but sacrifice himself because they end up, they use a rocket to fire off, and the effects of that is just what blasts the Wirren and disintegrates them. It kills them. I mean, we have the villains dying. And we also have a hook for the next story where the Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry go down to the planet to get a receiver. And you know what? This episode was just amazing. It was an amazing end to a really well thought out story. It's quick. It's fast paced. It leaves the audience wanting more, which is something that really stories should do. And a lot of the effects work. It's interesting that we're actually, because this season 12 is actually a bit of a story arc, and we are establishing the story arc here, which sort of connects the seasons, mainly because Philip HInchcliffe wanted to partially go back to an older 60s feel, even if he doesn't actually go back to a 60s feel. Like, this story still feels very modern. Like, you have Sarah Jane being the companion of the way forward, and this is really Robert Holmes at his best, and Philip HInchcliffe has already made a mark on his as producer. Basically, the story's great. So I'm going to give The Ark in Space Part 4 a perfect 10 out of 10. And we add up the scores for all purposes to give The Ark in Space a final score of 9.75 out of 10. Thank you everybody so much for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. I'd like to apologize again for that it's late. That really wasn't my intention. Hopefully we'll be back on track now. So please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we do Tom Baker's only televised 2-part story with the SONTARAN experiment.